Welcome to Monday, the 10th day of February, 2025. As we embark on a new week, well, it's going to be a very wintry week for really a lot of the whole western, really all of the western United States, as very cold Arctic air continues to take its way south. And we're also going to get a little bit of snow. And some areas that haven't had a lot of snow in quite a while will be getting a little bit. So we're going to see that coming together as Arctic air, which has been sitting over Western Canada, the Northern Rockies, the Northern Plains, and parts of the Pacific Northwest. It's going to get a chance to come a little bit south. Not rapidly. It's just going to kind of ooze its way south. Deep Arctic air is kind of like molasses or maple syrup. It's sticky and it's very dense. And so as it pushes slowly south and deepens through Thursday, we're going to find that the next 4 days will get very cold, and it's going to be a gradient north to south. That gradient right along the boundary of the deeper Arctic air, we're going to get a little light snow today across Montana, northern and northeastern areas of Wyoming. We're just talking about a dusting of snow, but that will work its way along and east of the divide. So east of the Continental Divide, across Montana and Wyoming today and into tonight and tomorrow morning, into far northern Colorado, there's going to be some light snow and flurry activity developing. There's going to be a little bit more in the way of Pacific moisture overrunning the deeper Arctic air, which will be further south now, Tuesday through Wednesday. That's going to bring some accumulating snow to the southern half of Wyoming, a good part of Nebraska, a good part of Colorado, a good part of Kansas, and then that snow will continue to just make its way slowly south. And a lot of the country along this Arctic boundary will see pretty good snow, as you'll see here in a moment. Then we're going to see the deeper Arctic air get shifted a little east as a couple of Pacific storms. One will come through Friday, Saturday, bringing some wet weather to the west, and another one's going to come in around next Tuesday. So the worst of the cold is basically through Thursday. After that time frame, it won't be as cold, but the weather pattern is still going to be staying quite active. Some beautiful sunrise and sunset photos from Kansas to Cowdrey, Colorado, to Cheyenne, Wyoming here over the last few days. And as the skies have cleared out between these Pacific waves, you can see beautiful snowscapes in the western mountains, especially the mountains of Montana, the mountains of western Wyoming have just been clobbered with a lot of snow here lately. That's really helped and boosted the snowpack. What we'd like to see is some more snow in this part of the world, and it's coming. Nice shot there out of Leadville. And then Dave Bell took an opportunity in Pinedale there as the break in the fronts came through the Wind River Mountains. One of the highest peaks in the lower 48 to find. The highest peak in Wyoming is Gannett Peak. Dave kindly pointed out where it is. It's hard to find. It's deep in the middle of the range there, but the clouds broke for just long enough to get a beautiful shot there from Pinedale. And a nice shot here out of Bondurant. You can see the wave action in the clouds here. Dan reported 16 inches of snow in less than 24 hours late last week in that basin up around the Bondurant area. Today, you can see the colder air sitting up here. The high pressure ridge continues up in Alaska and then starting to carve out a deep, very broad trough right here. So the colder air is where you get into the green and the blue colors. This will slowly shift south. So from today to Wednesday, you can see there's a big push of that green and blue further south. And the Pacific flow of air over the water here does entrain into the Arctic air a little bit of Pacific moisture. It's not really deep, but it's going to be enough to cause a collision of air masses. This is when you get snow, not necessarily from a low pressure system forming, but just two air masses coming together, Arctic meets Pacific. And that's always a good way to make it snow over a large area as well, as you'll see here in a moment. If we look and see how the cold air advances, this is by 11 a.m. today. So you can see the deepest Arctic air is from Cody and Grable to Buffalo to Sheridan along Interstate 90 here to the north end of the Black Hills. You can see the Black Hills holding up the cold air there. very cold, where it's been persistently cold over Montana, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. That's around 11 a.m. today. This is by tomorrow morning. Notice the green now to the I-70 corridor. And look at this east to west area of bitter cold in the purple and the dark blue here. Just really cold air getting all the way back into BC, all the way into Seattle, all the way into Portland, then across the Dakotas. By tomorrow morning, you can see the depth of the cold air. These are the forecasted low temperatures overnight tonight. So minus 22 in Sheridan to minus 30s, I think, is a foregone conclusion for a lot of Montana's eastern plains into western North Dakota. You can see the sub-zero temperatures get on the north side of the Black Hills here. You can still see that there's a bias to the north, but by tomorrow morning, we've got single digits down all the way to the I-80 corridor. By Wednesday, 11 a.m., the cold really comes south now. So you can see the cold overspreading the plains of Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska into Amarillo here. Cold air headed deep into the heart of Texas with this wave. Still the very cold air from Boise over into Bend, all the way over into Portland. Cold air gets all the way down into Southern California, into Arizona, as well as that push right here is pretty extensive, pushing that Arctic air south. As moisture overruns the Arctic air, this is the snow that will fall from today through tomorrow morning. So you can see there's a ribbon of snow right here. Again, it's not very deep, it's not very heavy, but along and east of the divide here in Montana, northern Wyoming, you're going to get a little band of snow. Then you see this gray, upslope clouds will form and some flurries. Along and east of the divide, you can see where the Continental Divide is really showing itself, where the Arctic air comes down over it and the Pacific air comes over it. So this will be a light dusting of snow, a little bit heavier along the Montana-Wyoming border, back all the way up into here. Then as we get into tomorrow night, into Wednesday, there's another plume of Pacific moisture, as you can see right here in the darker colors, comes over. And as we showed you, by Wednesday into Thursday, the Arctic air is all the way into Texas. So you see this area right here. This is where there's going to be another overrunning situation. The Pacific air overruns the Arctic air as it gets further east. So there's going to be a widespread, moderate snow event, maybe a little bit of heavy snow into this area right here that hasn't seen snow in a while, getting further east, as we'll show you here in a minute. So these areas, Kansas, Nebraska, into Oklahoma here, into Iowa, eastern Colorado, far southern Wyoming, there's going to be light to moderate snow Tuesday into Wednesday in some very cold air. And here it is. The water content's not really high, but when you take Pacific air over Arctic air, the snow crystal formation is the kind that stacks up a little bit deeper. And so these areas have not had snow in a while. You're going to get it. Nebraska, into Iowa, into Kansas, you're getting some snow cover across a lot of eastern Colorado as well. By Friday, there's more of a west-east flow. So this will ease the Arctic temperatures, pushing the Arctic air back more north to the border. But there'll be some Pacific moisture. So as we get into Friday and Saturday, this wave will track right on through. And what that will do is that will produce more mountain snow, maybe a little bit of snow on the plains. And we talked last week how this vortex was cutting off. We'll show you a bird's eye view here in a moment, and that's exactly what's happening. And the Arctic air is getting stretched out east to west across the northern tier of North America. This is the second wave of moisture that's going to come through with that Pacific system Friday and Saturday. Look at California and look at Arizona finally. Southern Utah, southern Arizona, rather central northern Arizona, the Four Corners area, the mountains of southwest Colorado. Friday, Saturday is when you really are going to see your best chances of moisture. We'll need to watch out for mudslides here in Southern California where the fires were. And this is another patch of moisture that's going to go across Nebraska, Kansas, and Iowa again. This is new. This is not what I just showed you earlier. As the Pacific moisture, notice how it's tracking further south now. Things are starting to work their way a little more south with the jet stream. That's what the second batch of moisture Friday through Sunday looks like. So you can see heavy snow in the Sierras, and finally some snow into these areas here. Then when we take a look at all of this, this is for the next 7 days added together. So this is all of the weather systems put together. So you can see where the moisture is going to be. And the snowfall, pretty impressive for some, especially out into the plains and further south in the Rockies. More snow for Montana, northwestern Wyoming, into the Pacific Northwest. Look at the nation. This is going to be impressive snow across the Northwest Corn Belt. Iowa finally getting some snow. Southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois as well, into Michigan, into the Northeast. Pretty far south extent of the snow as well. So a lot of winter weather over the next 7 days across the nation. Now I wanted to show you that bird's eye view. This is by Saturday. So the vortex gets cut off from the high, then it starts to join up again right around here. And we end up having this, see this horseshoe shape of very cold Arctic air across the higher latitudes right here. And notice that there's a lot of cold air over the North Pacific. This causes a gradient. And what we're doing right here is we're setting the stage for late February and early March for this cold air to help form a gradient that's going to be causing strong jet stream winds over the North Pacific come later February into early March. Kind of put that in the back of your mind for later. But a lot of times a precursor to future events gets set up early on. So it's just very interesting hemispheric pattern here coming together in the weeks ahead. This is the next wave that comes in on Tuesday. So there's another Pacific system coming on through. Now after this time frame, we might see a little bit of a thaw in the west. We'll see. But between now, the middle of next week, it's going to be busy weather, really coast to coast. So be ready for it. Have yourself a good Monday. We'll see you tomorrow.